Today we're joined by Mr. Mike Malizia. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing
Malizia.
great. How you doing?
Malizia. Malizia.
Nice
Okay.
Italian name.
Well, in Italian and then in Spanish, Malizia would mean malice.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The romantic languages.
Uh,
Yes. So how's it going, Mike, today? Everything good?
it's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
This
thank
is,
you. Thank you for giving me your time. It's
yeah.
quite an honor. So let's do the typical let's get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
Can you give me a little bit of your trajectory, how you started in golf and how you got to where you are
Yeah.
now?
Well, I started out, I was fortunate. My father was a club pro. So, I'm one of six kids. So we all played the game. We were all around it. And I just, took a love to it and started playing, started competing. I started playing, I think, when I was like 5, started competing when I was 9, became a pretty good junior player, and just really worked hard. And I ended up after high school went to tour school and went a couple times. Finally, um, got out on, it was a Nike tour at the time, so I played out there. Played just all over the place, and my love, I think everyone loves this game for some reason or another, and my love wasn't really the competition. Mine was more kind of the discovery, the self-discovery. So I was interested in so many different aspects of not just the golf swing, the physical side of it, the mental side of it, why certain guys perform better than others, why certain swings held up, certain swings didn't. So that was really, my kind of passion. I think that's great if you want to be a golf instructor. I think if you're trying to be a player, that can really clutter a
For
lot of
sure.
things. So, I was so fortunate that at an early age, my father taught me, and up until I was around 15 or 16, and he said, "Hey, I want you to go to the next level of instructor." So I started working with various instructors. So I've worked with, I would say I worked with David Ledbetter. I worked with Martin Hall. I worked with Mike Adams, was probably the biggest influence on me. I mean, Mike really kind of took me under his wing. And, when I decided I was going to quit playing, here I am, I'm 30 years old. I'd been out there for a while. I played every tour except the ladies, but, I mean, I played everywhere. So, it wasn't getting done. I mean, I could always, I was a good ball striker. There wasn't a weakness in my game other than the fact that performance, I didn't perform as high as I should have. But the interference there was, like I said, my love for the game. So when I decided that, hey, I'm not going to play anymore, it was like, all right, so what do I do? Because I've only been groomed to do one thing. And I was looking at, I had buddies that were in all different types of business, so I was looking at that. But then I kept kind of hearing the same theme, from Ledbetter to Adams to a lot of the great teachers are like, listen, you have to teach. And I go, no, man, I just came out of golf. I don't want to go back into golf. And plus, looking back at it now, I always seem to help a lot of the other players on the tee, and it was just a way of kind of whatever they were looking at or we were all working on our games. You'd have that discussion late on the tee, at a tour event. And it always seemed to, just now looking back at it, seemed to, I could explain it in a way that was more simplistic or a different way of looking at it, which seemed to help players. And then I had a good buddy of mine, Carter Murkison, who said to me, just give me 6 months at the place that he was at. Just give me 6 months teaching. I'm like, listen, man, I haven't worked with the average club player. I've only been, helping buddies of mine, tour players. So I started that, and that was really easy. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, this is pretty easy to help somebody get good at this game, especially, the recreational player. So, it was my passion, which I never knew that that would be my passion, but it was always there, and that kind of how I wound up. So I was at his place, and Palm City where I live. I live in Stuart, Florida. So I was there 17 years, and then there's a place called Admirals Cove in Jupiter. They had reached out to me. They're looking for a director of instruction. They want to put in this big, beautiful performance center. So I've been at Admirals at 4 years now, and I mean it's just the greatest. Very, very fortunate.
Sounds like you've landed on your feet at least. And
Yeah.
if all you've ever known is golf, right? And I guess the perspective is, do I want to get away from this, or do I need a break, or I guess you found a segue into continuing to do what you like, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's I've been so fortunate to meet so many people in the game and so many just great coaches, teachers, sports psychologists, and really it was funny because Dr. Brett McCabe was one that really hit home with me when he had a saying that, you don't hate the game. You just hate the way the game made you feel. And that's for a high level person who
That's
plays, because what the average golfer doesn't understand is when you're a tour player, the game changes. It's not the same game anymore than when you were a kid, what you do. It now becomes a business. It now becomes consumed, and you don't get to just leave it at the golf course as much as these guys say, yeah, I just leave it at the golf course and I go home. And no, it doesn't work that way. It's a business. No one leaves their business at the business.
yeah, it's hard to go from a recreational point of view, or even like as a competitive amateur, to where it becomes a job, and
Yeah.
it's a checks and balances, and if you're saying you were on the mini tours and on trying to one day qualify, and now
Yeah.
it's dollars and cents, right? I mean, I
It
guess,
is.
right? That's
Yeah. It's just it becomes a business, and the grind is the grind is hard.
yeah, I can only imagine.
I remember when I first decided, okay, here I'm gonna, do this, because I just kept hearing the same thing from all these great instructors. You were born to do this. You were born to do this. So I remember somebody making a statement. They said to me, "Oh, now you're going to go into the real world. Now you're going to know what it's like to have to really work." And I looked at them and I said, "Wait a minute. You don't have a clue." Because the world that I was in, I had to go out and bust my ass 8 to 10 hours a day at the gym practicing. And you know what? Didn't mean anything. I could go months without getting a paycheck. So you're
Yeah,
telling me all I have to do, show up, do the best I can, and I'm guaranteed I'm going to get paid? Sign me up.
that's kind of like now when you go and you make it to that higher level, with professionals and stuff. I remember I come from a baseball family. So
Mhm.
my father was signed by the Giants in 63, 62. My brother was signed by the Mets at one point. And I went down to my Florida. I was a really good like double A uh, amateur player, really good. You know, I go down to Miami Miracles. Bill Veeck, who used to own the White Sox, he was a real sideshow. But anyway, went to a tryout down there, and I realized that uh, all I had was warning track power compared to these guys. You're like a big fish in a small pond. Then you
Yeah.
then you jump into the Pacific Ocean, and you're like, wait a second, I'm surrounded by orcas. But what did you have? What was the effect? Your mental state when you got out on the tour, and I mean, did you go out and you felt you belonged, or
Yeah, I did. When I came out, it's funny because when I came out as that can't miss kid. You
mm,
know, hit the ball well, I hit it a long way, didn't really have a weakness. Um, and I remember early on, playing well, but not getting to that next level. So I was, I think, 19, and I went to see Bob Rotella. And So in classic Rotella, he's, hey, let's just go out and play 18 holes on his course. Just play it like a tournament, and we'll talk about it later. So I think I shot like 65 or something like that. And he says, so what's the problem? And started laughing. And then it got to the point where he said to me, one of the things he said is, he goes, I bet a lot of people tell you how great you are in your game. And I go, yeah, kind of heard that, you know. He goes, and how does that make you feel? And I'm like, well, you know, it made me feel good at first. And then as you fast forward and you keep missing tour school, or you're in a position on a PGA Tour event to really kind of make a mark, make your name, and it's not happening, you start to have these things in your head where this guy's got to be a friggin' idiot to hit it this good, putt it that well, hit it that far, and he can't get it done. So now there's an anxiety thing. So it completely switched. It went from, yeah, I'm the man, to, wow, what are these people thinking?
Yeah.
You know,
That's. But now you didn't play college golf.
nope,
Do you think that might have made a difference?
no,
No.
not at all. I think I was more mature. I was more focused. Um, it's different now. They do, it's a higher competitive level. It was high back then, obviously, but um, that I wouldn't look back and say that was an issue. Um, I was very serious, very structured. I didn't have time. You know, it was like I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to spend all my time trying to get there.
That's not.
So a little different, different road.
Yeah.
You see a lot of, like, the more the European players were like that early on. Now everyone's going to college, which is great because the programs are so phenomenal.
Right. So
Yeah,
so the competition is really really
absolutely.
high level. Yeah. So now you go from the tour to working with weekend hackers. Okay. Now how does that? So is it you're working on your game with top coaches,
Uh-huh.
top psychiatrists, top everything, right?
Yeah,
And they're working on nuances, I imagine, and idiosyncrasies and micro moves and all this stuff.
yeah.
You got somebody who's not making contact. What do you do?
Yeah, it's funny because when you start off that way, right? It the When I got into the coaching business, I started to get a lot of tour players. I started to get a lot of competitive amateurs. I started with a bunch of competitive juniors. So I would say 70% were competitive players, because I came from a competitive tour player background, which, and it's my biggest thing was, if I'm going to get you to where you want to go, I better have walked that road. It's very hard for me to walk you down a road I've never walked down. Not to say that you have to be that player to be a great teacher. There are a lot of great teachers that were not very good players. I just think it's a different approach. So the majority of the players that I had were better players, but with the amateurs, to me, honestly, I don't care who I teach. I really don't. What I don't like teaching is somebody who just thinks it's going to be a quick fix. If you're a beginner, if you're a tour player, if you're, a single digit handicapper, I get excited for people that want to enjoy the journey, because part of my job is to help you down that road, down that journey. And, the gratification, I think, for anybody who's in this business, any kind of business where you're helping people get better, I mean, there's nothing better, than helping people really get to where they want to go.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that it's as an instructor, I believe, and this is just my opinion, of course, that you can instruct, you can demonstrate, you can guide, but at the end of the day, that person's got to put in the work. And, um, your results are only going to be as good as their effort. And so I went out to see Greg McChatten. I mean, I've been coached by I've paid for a lot of top 100 classes. I mean, everybody down the line, because the answer was the listing. This is, if I go to this guy, it's going to do it. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I went to see Mike Wilson a day before a tournament, right? Because Ledbetter had opened an academy up in Hudson National. So
Yeah.
you had Spearman and this guy, Mike Wilson. Mike Wilson was working with Paul Stankowski, and Stankowski just won. And I'm playing the next day at the U.S. Met Pub Link, one of these pub links things. And I figured, and I was struggling, but I figured if I went to see him for an hour, everything would change. That's the way this game gets you to think. But I finally went to see Greg, and I never got now I'm flying from New York to California to take this lesson. Okay. I go there, I'm in the back of a range, and that club never got above my waist in either direction. That was like 60 hours of that. And near the end, I started to enjoy it and understand it. And when it all sunk in, it made a big difference, but it was a process.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of like,
Well, I think it's people's perception, right? I always tell people that I meet for the first time that come in, and two things that I tell them. I'll get them hitting the ball great, and then I'll go, "Oh, by the way, you're going to lose it." They go, "What do you mean?" I go, "You're not going to keep this. It's not about that. You're not going to be able to. You can manage it, but don't think that you have it, because you don't." I said, and the second thing, I said, "Listen, you've been sick before. When you went to the doctor and you're sick, did you leave his office cured? No. You don't leave cured. He's just giving you the tools. He's giving you the direction. He's giving you the prescription to use to make yourself better." So it's the same thing. And I think that's so important for people, because it's the misconception that, okay, Ralph's slicing the ball. Ralph, here's what we're going to do. We're going to move this hand here, pull that foot back, and boom, you're fixed. See you later. It doesn't work like that.
yeah. And that's kind of, the person, you have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy the
Absolutely.
setbacks. You have to understand that sometimes you're going to take 3 steps backwards to take a small step, or then a giant step. And it's actually, looking back on it, there's nothing linear about progress in that. And people don't like that. People want instant.
No,
We live in a world of instant gratification.
absolutely.
But as you prescribe, I go see Mike, and I brought this up to Stickney, Tom Stickney,
Yeah.
and now with the internet, the
Yeah.
advent of the internet. So, like, you'll see, I have a whole bunch of books. Like, when I wanted to learn golf, I had to get books, and I had binders with all these tips from Golf Magazine. Well, that's Tom Seaver, but that's, I had all these,
Yeah.
and I got all the clippings, and I was telling that to Brady Riggs. And now, with the click of a button, you can get 400,000 times more than that. That's a collection of like 10 years, but you get that at one click. So I leave you. You've done your prognosis. We've done, come up with a diagnosis, gives me a prescription. Okay, I want you to go home. When you're at home, practice this, do that. When you're on the range, I want you to do this, and that. And all of a sudden, my wife's making dinner, and I have nothing better to do. I flip on there, and oh, here's my YouTube coach. Here's my
Yeah.
here's my Instagram coach, and there's my TikTok coach.
Yeah. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster only if you don't know how to use it. I mean,
Right.
it's great. I think the information out there, all of it's, for 90% from the top guys, right? It's great stuff. But as I tell our students, and we get this, Tom Stickney and I talk about this all the time too, well, I watched this on YouTube, or I watched this on Instagram. And I always say, listen, what's magic for one is could be tragic for another.
Yeah.
So it's not about is this move the right move or the wrong move? Is it a matchup for you? If you start mixing matchups, then that's where these people they just get going sideways. And I mean, golf has changed so much if you look at the instruction side of it, right? Because back in the day, before you had the golf instructors like that, the puzzle was to get the ball in the hole.
Yeah.
Learn how to get the ball in the hole. Today, that puzzle's gone. Today, the puzzle is find the perfect swing. And there is no perfect swing,
That's,
right? There's only what you have. So it's like when I tell my students, I'm like, listen, put my head on your body. I will beat you 10 out of 10 times.
yeah.
I have all your, I'm not going to make mistakes that you make out on the golf course. So it's more about not mechanical knowledge, it's learning to play the game. So I think when you look at kind of where golf instruction is, I think we look at pretty swings as the right way to swing, right? Look, without sounding arrogant, like my swing is a very pretty swing. It's planed out. I mean, you're looking at it and there's not much you're going to fix. Now, can it perform? That's a different animal. That's a complete different animal.
Yeah. That's,
And now you might see somebody like Ryan Fox, for instance. You look at that golf swing and you go, whoa, now can it perform? Yeah, it can perform. So there's so much more than just the golf swing. The golf swing is a big part of it because it has to be a matchup. It has to fit the person. It has to not only match up with with the mechanics, it has to match up with the physical limitations, the stability, mobility of the client. And then you can create it, but it doesn't have to look pretty. And I think somewhere down the line, we decided that the pretty golf swings were the most efficient.
yeah. I think that, just to add to what you said, it's not just your swing, but your swing on that day. So it's another variable that people, you know what I mean? Any
Yeah.
given Sunday, you could do it. Anything. So you got to
Yeah.
figure out how to get in the hole with what you bought. This one's what I
Yeah.
have, and this one,
And
And
everybody, what do they want? We want to be machine like.
yeah,
Like people come to the number one thing I get in lessons. Well, Mike, I want to be more consistent. And the first thing I tell them is I can't help you. You don't even wake up consistent,
right.
right? You wake up different every
Every
day.
day, yeah. You know,
So I mean, you look at Justin Thomas shoots what, 78, 62 at the Players. Where's the consistency in that?
those
Now,
are the
here's a
best in the
guy
world.
who's physically fit, right? Got all the knowledge that he needs. He's got a whole team. He can't fix it. So it's more about managing variability than it is to try to solve the puzzle. Because when they start trying to solve the puzzle, that's when it goes really sideways.
Yeah,
So
and
there's so much to it.
mhm. And to your point about the look. So you go on any form. Like I have a pretty good Instagram swing. So it's good for pictures and stuff like that. Sometimes the geometry can be there. So you have a lot of Hogan posers on these forms, and
Yeah.
they look just like Hogan. But is the underlying the dynamics there? The force is really working with that look.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cottage industry to have a good looking swing. Until you play with somebody, you can't tell. You're just watching motion, right?
Well, that's what it's associated with. I mean, you look at the players. Everyone wants to swing like Adam Scott.
Right, right.
Everyone wants that perfect, pretty swing.
Yeah.
But it's more about performance than it is. I mean, you got to have the mechanical matchups. And with technology today, I mean, I'm a big tech guy, so I use all of it. But it's helped us see under the hood. It's helped us be able to help our players become more efficient. But at the end of the day, that efficient move does not have to look pretty, if you will. It's your swing. It's your fingerprint,
Right.
you know?
So let's get into the technology and your evolution and your evolution as a golf coach. I was talking to Hashimoto, Terry Hashimoto, right?
Terry.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm talking to so many people, I get screwed up, and I'm getting older, so I'm just, But we were talking about lidar. I right now, from what I understand, there's something out there that's collecting 28 million points per second. I can do 20 million. I know that, but static. I think in order to capture a golf swing, it's pretty complex motion. But given that and the exponential growth in technology, right? For guys like yourself, it's a constant game of, self-improvement, you know, professional development, learning,
Yeah.
if you're going to be on top of your game, right? So let's
Hmm.
talk about your evolution as an instructor, your incorporation of technology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 55 years old. So I think to me, it's so good because there was no technology the first, till I was in my 20s and 30s, and then technology kind of took over. So I'm fortunate to have worked without it and been with teachers and taught without it and then taught with it. And now, obviously, for the past 20 plus years, have coached using it. I think it's great. I think I embrace all of it. I use all of it. I think how it's used, I think how it's communicated to the student. And I think that, it can help, but it can hurt the student. It's not, as a teacher, it's only going to help us because we can see things now that we couldn't before. We can measure things, we can see consistencies. I think that what I see with a lot of the younger teachers are two things. The first thing is they lose sight of the individual that's in front of them because they're just constantly into the graphs, into the numbers.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the second thing is you have to communicate it in a way that's very simple. I mean, we all look at, I think we lose sight of the fact that if you're a doctor, if you're an attorney, if you're a scientist, if you're in any profession, we have our own language
Mhm.
that we speak together.
Right.
You can't speak that language to the student,
No.
right? So, golf instructing, to me, the biggest facet in golf instructing is more about understanding the individual in front of you and being able to communicate it in a way. And sometimes I'll make it complicated because that's what they want. And I know that's how I get a result from them because that's the way their mind thinks. And then the other, I have to make it just as simple as possible. But that's the art of coaching, to be able to adapt to the student so he understands. And I love, like I said, I love technology, but it's all about making it simplistic, and it's all about using it the right way. And it's funny because, you know, uh, Billy Harmon was one that said, he's like, the technology, the machines, they can't coach fear and anxiety out of a player. So, it's once again, you got to remember too, I'm coming from a player's background. So everything I look at is through life experience where
Yeah.
I can manipulate the numbers. You want me to manipulate the numbers? I can manipulate the numbers. I can do whatever you want me to do on the machine.
Right.
What comes out when my anxiety's up, you know,
Yeah.
when I gotta do something, be it a match or whatever, what comes out in the person? And I think technology is going there. I really do. I think before you know it, we're going to have a sensor in the ball, in the club, in your shoes.
Yeah.
You probably be able to wear something on your arm that's going to, you know, look back and go, okay, so Ralph had the lead going into the last hole and he blew this shot way right. What did he do there?
Check your pulse,
Uh,
whatever,
yeah, there's
whatever indicator.
yeah.
You'll add that to your track, your ball tracking and then the pulse and
Yeah.
your downswing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. That's yeah, but it's becoming more again with the internet, with the advent of the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm standing there, and I managed a place where we had 8 instructors. At the time, it was the #1 range in the country, non-stop, like I'm talking not. People were triple parking on Northern Boulevard. New York, if you get a ticket like that, it's $150. They would not leave. It's like an assembly line. So I watched a lot of these, and this is in the late '90s. So you watch the people come in, and it was a different consumer. So today, with the advent of the internet, you're going to get a lot of people with a lot of information and a lot of misinformation, right? So I imagine it's got to be some kind of struggle to declutter in order to get started.
Oh,
You gotta
it is because that's what we get today at every lesson. Well, I saw this thing on the internet, and if I do this, and I saw this, and it's like, I always tell my students, listen, it's like a doctor. When you read the thing, it says consult your doctor before taking. Yeah, they should call us, consult us before they try something on Instagram. And listen, it might work, it might not. Like I said, magic for one, tragic for another. But you got to know it's not about right or wrong. It's about matchups.
right.
That's all the golf swing is matchups. Because we're all different. We all have, limitations. We all have different fingerprints, and you use, that's, like I said, once again, me coming from a player background. I laugh when they're comparing tour players to I'm like, they can't do what I can do. There's no way.
Right.
You got that person that's worked his whole life, maybe didn't play golf till later, or he played some sports. I mean, these guys have only done one thing their whole life, and they're athletes, and they're in shape, and they're strong. They have strength coaches. So to ask a normal guy to make this kind of a move, I mean, there's certain things that you can copy from a tour player, but there's also things that are just, they don't have the skill set to do it. So once again, how do you make somebody better when you have somebody like that? There's multiple ways to do it.
Yeah. So it's a case study of one, the person in front of you, right?
That's it.
That's all that matters.
That's it. And you have to have, and that's why I study everything from the physiology of the body to the mental to the physical to, you know, course management, like Scott Fawcett stuff, and all the different things, because I need to be able to pull that tool. I mean, Mike Adams instilled that in me a long time ago. He's like, you got to have as many many tools in your toolbox that you can have, because you're never going to know when you need one. So you need to be able to pull that tool out to fix the problem.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a very, very important point. Back to the first one. So you say, you consult your doctor and this and that, but
Yeah.
guys should come in with the caveat, okay, it's going to give you this many side effects. You're going to be bleeding for 6 months. You're going to be taking this. It's,
Yeah, right.
but I was bringing this up to Manzella, but he never let me get to that point. But if you, if you have, you have all these gadgets, all the bells and whistles, right?
Yeah.
Ball flight laws, pressure shifts, all this stuff. You have that student in front of you, and it's just nothing isn't adding up. Nothing. They're performing exactly what that is supposed to give you this X result, right? I think that as a good instructor, you have to have a bag of tricks. Put that on the side and try to make it work, right? I mean, I don't know. What do you do? when it
Well,
doesn't,
yeah, well,
you know,
that's the psychology side of it.
yeah.
That's where, understanding behavioral profiling, understanding communication, understanding what I need to do to make this student better. And very early in the lesson, I can tell what road I'm going to go down with a student based on what I'm asking them to do. So some people just do not have the coordination to do it. So you have to be able to work around that. Now, how do I said this to somebody, I did a podcast, and somebody asked me a question about what's one of the things we were talking about younger instructors. And one of the questions I said is, how would you make a person better if you couldn't change any part of their swing? Now, physically change it. I'm not talking fundamentally. I'm talking about motion.
Hmm.
Okay. So then you need to teach them to play the game. Like I said before, I said, I'm not going to make the mistakes that they're going to make. I'm not going to misalign. I'm not going to put the ball position in the wrong spot. I'm not going to mishit or not mishit. I'm not going to um, misalign. I'm going to pick the proper clubs. I'm going to allow for a miss. I'm going to be able to calculate different shots and I'm going to eliminate. So that's really teaching them to play the game. It amazes me. Um, I think more so that people don't know how to play the game. The average golfer,
Hmm.
they think the swing is the game.
Right.
The swing will help you get to the next level, understanding your swings in the matchup. But you look at the majority of these people, they don't know how to play the game. And like I said, as a young kid, that's where it was all at. It wasn't in the swing. And then when I turned probably 15 or 16, and you got Ledbetter and you got Faldo and kind of created that, which is great. And that's kind of where we're at. But I think that's an element that's left out in coaching.
I think that Ledbetter did a lot for golf coaches. Uh,
Yeah,
Faldo,
he did unbelievable.
Faldo and him, I think, in my opinion, created a bit of a codependency there. I think
Yeah.
that Nick Faldo got to a point where he needed Ledbetter, even though there was nothing wrong. I mean, read an article when I was back in those days. I'm a big Nick Faldo fan. It was back then.
Yeah.
My first when I first started playing, I mean, when I was playing, so I got down to about a 0, maybe a 1, bouncing back there, back and forth. And I thought that my swing looked like, I thought because I had the golf swing, the book. So the
Yeah.
guy he's using as a model as a cartoon is David Frost. But
Yeah.
David Frost is my height. David Frost is my weight. This is the model. And I was hitting the ball incredibly. The ball doesn't know where your backswing is. It doesn't know anything, right? I just know that I was it was doing what
Yeah.
I was. One day, some guy decides to film me, right? I think I'm here. I'm somewhere up here. And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. Once I saw that, I was never the same. I've never, I've never played that well again. I got stuck into some,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, and there are some of the players that I work with. Well, I don't use a lot of video on them. I use it for me because they just get jacked up on it. Some I use the whole thing. But once again, that's got to be the person in front of you. If you can't read the person, if you can't understand how they relate, how they get better, um, it's hard.
yeah. So I mean, you
It's
you
hard
you
because
mentioned Ryan Fox, and you know, what if Ryan Fox's coach would have decided to change his, that side, whatever, right? Whatever it is that getting him to do what he's doing.
yeah.
You have to you have to know when to leave well enough alone. It's that judgment stuff that guys like yourself and other good coaches would be able to see, beyond that.
And I think that's where the technology comes in as well. For us as coaches, I always call them, you might have a flaw that you can recover from. So what do I mean by that? It's just like me. Okay. I had a disc, a herniated disc, right? Well, it was pushing on a nerve. So I had to have back surgery. Okay. There are people that are walking around with herniated discs everywhere that are not pushing on a nerve and they don't even know they have it. Right. So if they can get away with that, there's no reason to cut them open to do surgery for it. So it's the same thing. And that's why, when I assess a student and I tell the younger instructors this, the first thing I do is I never go into what I don't like about their swing. I do an assessment on what their numbers are
All right.
because they might do something that, wait a minute, that's not right. So it should cause this, but they can recover from that position. Well, if they can recover from it, I don't want to, that's their DNA. I'm not going to change that.
Yeah.
So that's where technology, because without technology back in the day, you'd see somebody, missing the shot and they'd go, okay, well, the club's laid off because all we had was video, right? So that's the
All right.
problem. We got to get the club on. Well, wait a minute. The club's laid off, but he's planing it out in the downswing and he doesn't have a path or face issue. Why am I fixing something that's cosmetic?
And that's
So I always go to the numbers before I go to the swing to make sure, because I don't want to change something that's not causing a problem. Because, like I said, it's about matchups, and if they do this, this should happen or that should happen.
yeah, and that's like you're teaching golf, and there's guys that out there teaching position golf. And I'll give you an example. Like I've always wound up with a little cup at the top, right? Somewhere down before I got there, that wrist was gradually, and it was
Yeah,
part of my DNA, part of my transition, whatever. So I
yeah.
started watching this. Now I'm trying to get here, and it's not. Everything's going that way, and it just doesn't
And
make any
and
sense.
and why though? Why? Here's why, right? Who's ever the hottest guy playing, everyone wants to copy that, right?
Yeah, that's
And whoever is coaching him, he's the next hot coach. So these trends go, you know. I mean, when Nicholas was winning everything, everyone was up.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
Hogan, everyone was flat. Yeah, so you look at, DJ, everyone's bowing the wrist, but now you got Scheffler, who's kind of like that.
yeah,
So, the face is hanging a little more open. So it's not about, like I said, magic and tragic.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's where that's where we come up with all this stuff, though.
yeah.
Who's ever the hottest on tour, that's who we want to copy.
Yeah, I think in my case it's out of boredom. Like I'm not.
Sure.
I'm no longer a player. I'm just like a experimenter. So
Yeah, and
it's,
you know what?
you
It's fun to do that.
yeah.
That's the other part of, once again, why people love the game. Like I said, I was always intrigued with, I just worked really hard, had a little bit of talent, so I had a little bit of success, but mine was always, well, why does this swing work? And I drove Ledbetter absolutely nuts. I always make this joke because I'd go take a lesson from him and he'd say, okay, so here's where I want the club, bop, 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 bop. See you in a week. But back then we had VHSs, and I would go and make a VHS tape of all the guys on tour, good ball strikers that had the club in the wrong position, the one that he didn't want me, and then come back the following week, pop it in, and go, okay, so why is it okay for them to do it, but you want me not to do it?
Right.
So that's my love for it. That's what intrigues me and gets me excited, and it's what's exciting for me is solving the puzzle of helping people get better. If that's through golf swing mechanics with technology, if that's through knowledge, if that's through reading the person or just teaching them how to play the game of golf, that's what excites me.
Yeah. Then again, you're talking about Ledbetter. I didn't finish that thought on Faldo. That Faldo went to Ledbetter, and he felt like something was going on up here, and Ledbetter simply told him, "Go up to the top, just like twist that a little bit." And basically nothing.
Yeah.
Aldo turns around. Well, yeah, that's right. Okay, that's better. But he hadn't changed anything. So it's like you said, it's knowing what the prescription is for the
Absolutely.
totally mental.
Yeah, sometimes it's that placebo effect, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
I
let's
mean, I
talk.
get students
Go ahead. I'm
that
sorry.
do that all the time.
Yeah, they come
I
in.
move my thumb from here to here.
Right.
I'm like, you can chop your thumb off. It's not going to matter.
Right. I lost your picture there, Beef. Uh, well, there you go. So let's talk about your new gig down here, or it's not for you've been there 4 years, and you said you've built
Yeah.
a large facility there for, and what kind of
Yeah.
what kind of place? It's a yacht club or
So it's Admirals Cove. It's in Jupiter, Florida.
Admirals Cove?
We
Okay.
have, yeah. So we have 18 holes on the east side. It's on the intercoastal. And then we have 27 on the west side. The west side is where we built the performance center. And it turned out great. I mean, it's a Admirals Cove. If you, if you watch Netflix, the Full Swing on Netflix,
Mhm.
a lot of it was filmed here. If you look at like the Golf Pass with Rory and a lot of Golf Channel stuff, a couple Nike commercials. So it's a great spot. But Performance Center, we put in 4 bays. One of them's mine that I teach out of. We have 2 member bays that they practice out of, and then another performance teaching bay. We put in a putt view putting system with visual optics that you can work on different putts at different locations. There's my office and Matt King, who's assistant director of golf, is in the performance center, and we have 2 assistants. They have their office, and then we have a full-on bar as well. So and we also have the pro shop inside. So it's a pretty cool setup.
With all the bells and whistles. So you have
Yeah,
54 holes.
yeah,
So you have 54 holes, and it's just a private facility. It's
it is. Yeah,
a
yeah. You
private
have to
club.
own a home to be a member. Yeah,
Okay, so you have to have a
so,
rest. You have to live on.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we have a few uh very high end people that live here, a lot of celebrities and stuff like
yeah,
that.
I can
So
imagine. Yeah, I live here.
yeah, and the members are great. It's really such a great place because it's the members and the staff that really make it. You know,
Okay,
it's special. And you don't get that a lot. You
and
know?
these members, you must have a big cross section. I mean, volume there. If you have 54 holes, it's like a
Yeah.
small little town, right?
Yeah. Well, Jupiter's the mecca of golf. I mean,
Yeah,
that's where the majority of your tour players live. We have
medalist. You have the Bear Club.
MacArthur. Yeah, we're all right in
Yeah,
in just that little square. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
good. All right, Mike.
Good spot.
So you have anything you'd like to add?
No, this was great. I love, talking shop and
Yeah,
love your podcast. This is great.
thank you, thank you.
But
You know, it's one of the things that gives me the opportunity to meet a lot of people like yourself. It's pretty cool. We had never met, and I
yeah.
found some of your stuff interesting, and then I get to talk to you, and that's really it. It's really all it's all. It's just talking shop.
Yeah, that's
And,
that's great. That's what
yeah.
we love
So
to do.
yeah. So it's been a pleasure, Mike, and thank you. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
No,
I
I
really
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. Okay. Thank
You
you.
too. All right.
All right. Bye.
Thanks.